Hello. Hi, everybody. Hey, Shelly, could you, in my purse, I have a black wire. I might be too late to set it up, but I don't have my microphone set up right.
Guess what time of year it is? It's candy season.
Halloween candy everywhere, including in my cupboard.
I don't have any. I have intentionally
that will
not purchased
change.
it.
That will
Well, I
change.
know, because that's why I haven't bought any, because
Right.
I'm going to have plenty.
All right. So, how is everybody? It is snowing here in Colt, but it's supposed to be like 50 or something on Friday. So
65, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll hold hard on that. Hopefully that'll happen for us.
All right.
Okay. So we have been. Hi, who is joining us? I can't tell. Sometimes we get the things and sometimes we don't. And I don't know how to. Hi, whoever you are. Hello. Good to see you.
Hi, Shelly.
Oh, good. That's not Shelly. Not this time.
It is Shelly.
Yeah. Oh, it is Shelly. Oh, well, now we have two. So, hi. How are you? Okay, so the topic for today is how to address challenges of multiple business locations. But before we get into that, we probably have some announcements. I don't know what they are, though. And Shelly doesn't have a handy little sticky note here to tell us, so we'll just have to.
Contest.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You guys talked about that a little bit on the phone this morning.
Yeah, so we're at 590 some, maybe closer to 600 now. Likers, followers. What is this stupid social media word?
Members?
Followers?
I don't know.
Members
of our Facebook group.
Of our Axe Ambassador Facebook group. And we are going to do a holiday season campaign to get it to 1,000 by December 31st.
I think we can hit it so much faster than that. I bet we could do it by Thanksgiving, easy.
We maybe could, but we're not changing it because that's what I said and you didn't dispute it earlier.
I did not hate on it.
So silence is consent. So
That's
by
right.
December 31st, and the 1,000th person to join the group, which Shelly will be tracking, gets one of our new planners for 2020.
We haven't any out here.
I don't think
We have a pile of them though, so if you want them, you just let us know and we can hook you up. They're $20 a piece. They're also on Amazon. Oh, we have Shelly's.
So there's this planner, and then you also get a free copy of the book,
which, as you can see, is
for number 1,000. So you should invite all your friends because they get a free thing when they sign up for number 1,000. And if they really love you, they might give it to you.
possibly.
Yeah.
Hey, Michelle.
Do we have Michelle's planner, by the way?
Michelle bought her planner. No, she owes us money.
It's the other way around. See, Michelle's going to try and do
She was
solid.
trying to be nice to you, and then I totally threw you under the bus. Totally fine. No, not worried. No, we saved one because there was so many people wanted it, but we saved one as sort of a display copy and then gave it to Michelle at the end of the day. So congratulations, Michelle, by the way, on the event last week.
Yeah, it was great.
It's in the mail. It's in the mail.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Oh, we have them up here.
Yep, I grabbed them off here. So what other news do we have?
Well, you're doing a bunch of stuff at the beginning of November.
I am. Next Friday, I'm going to the Billy Sutton Institute for Saturday. I guess I'm going Friday night to do some project management work with the leadership group all day Saturday. And then the week after that, I'm going to Sioux Falls. I'm speaking at the Emerging Leaders Conference in Sioux Falls. It's a South Dakota Banking Association event, and that's going to be fun. We also are having really fun conversations about our stuff and making software out of our culture type stuff and our framework, so that's been super exciting. What else is going on?
I don't know. I think
you're doing an executive retreat in the beginning of November, right?
No, I'm doing one mid-November, right around Thanksgiving time. Yeah, with a firm out of Rapid City.
Yeah.
Did one with Department of Human Services this last week.
Oh yeah, that was cool. How did they like the thing, by the way?
I'll tell you.
Oh, that's sad.
So that was a lot of fun. That's really cool. If you don't know anything about the Department of Human Services, you should definitely look it up and learn about them. They provide, so that whole department, which is falls under the cabinet of the governor of the state of South Dakota. The whole department is focused on helping people with disabilities across the state. And yes, that is the right way to say it because I asked. So they have facilities all across the state to help, and they have six-ish, 5.5, 6 divisions. So they've got, placement for people who need to be in homes. They've got job placement, vocational rehab. They've got a whole division for the blind, so they can create jobs for people who are blind that they can do, or businesses that they can own, and some of those are state funded. So it is like way cool to learn about all that, and the amount of effort that there's like 600 employees across the state. So anyway, that was really cool to learn about that. So if you want to know more about all those folks and what they're doing, that's Department of Human Services. Yep. So that was cool.
That is cool.
All right. So
is that it? Okay. Seems like a lot. We also, the book in all of its forms, audio, Kindle, and actual book, and the planner are all available on Amazon. So if you looking for books or planners, you can grab it all out there. I guess Barnes & Noble is another place you can find it, but it's a good place to go. All right, so this week's topic is how to address the challenges of multiple business locations. I sort of snuck in one of my Facebook posts, remote work, because I think there's a lot of people, at least in the Black Hills area, that they're here for some other reason, family or a partner's job, and then they actually are working remotely for somebody. So I thought that'd be a fun thing to sneak in here. But some of the questions we have, hey Abby, are how can culture types help manage the challenges of multiple locations? Let's see, I'm just trying to think what the logical order is on these two.
I think start with the third one first.
I think that's a good idea. Why don't you take that one?
All right. Why is communication vital in managing multiple locations? Well, for those of us who thinks it goes, the answer to that question goes without saying, you're wrong, because everyone doesn't understand communication, or that it needs to happen. They want it, but they don't know how to ask for it, and maybe don't know how to make it happen. So, and I think the important thing to think about is not just communication. I mean, in some instances that things can be so siloed that there is zero communication, but very, very often that's not the case. There is communication, but it's not effective. So I think it's really important to understand what makes communication effective for your organization. For some organizations, it's email. But for some other organizations, like I've worked in an organization where we had a remote site in just south of the Yukon. They didn't get very good email reception up there, or any kind of reception, frankly. But the best way to get somebody was on their landline. So they operated a lot on things that needed to be addressed right away by talking on the phone. So what actually makes communication effective for your organization between sites is really important, an important thing to know and decide. And I mean, why is it important? Well, because if you don't do it, it's going to make your life a lot harder. It's going to make everybody's life a lot harder. Your turnover is going to be higher. Your production is going to be lower. And probably you're going to have to shut a location or two if you don't get that shit on lockdown. So
yeah, you will. People will leave you. The other piece about it too is, how do you like to communicate, in the sense of, let's say maybe you're running a remote location to the headquarters office. That can be great and a tragedy in a couple ways. The communication thing is really key. The other thing about communication is sometimes you can get things done more effectively when you're not at headquarters, right? Because things aren't as strict. The rules might not be quite the same. Maybe the dress code's different. I'm thinking when I was in federal service, the headquarters were in DC, and you dressed up to go to work. I mean, it is professional dress code. And, at a remote site, it's like, jeans and whatever usually worked. So there's some things like that are beneficial, and the communication in the sense of you have a little buffer from the formality. But the other side is you also have to figure out what you need from the headquarters office. So if you are part of a team that's really tied into what other people at other locations are doing, then that communication, not only the structure of the communication is important, but also how often do you actually need to communicate, and do you want to do video communication, which is far more rich with nonverbal, and frankly, I have been on a lot of conference calls where you mute your end and then you mess around and you goof off because you don't really care what the person's saying. And then when there's a silence, you're like, oh God, did they ask me a question? So frankly, video is better that way. It's not very common, or it hasn't.
Says the fixer.
Right.
It's not better if you don't want
you actually want a conversation, communicate successfully. But it's also like I have a call with a client in Canada on Friday, and I have his conference line, but he can also, he said we could use Zoom. And frankly, for IT clients in this kind of remote work way, I like to see their face, because what happens a lot with IT professionals and maybe others is that if I'm on the phone, and I'm guilty of this too, but I know he is, if he's on the phone, he'll be working away, typing on something else and only half listening. But when I'm talking to him, he still tries to do it, but it's not less. So a lot of it kind of boosts that effective communication. And frankly, if you're an independent or an organizer and you don't need that feeling of team, then maybe you only talk to people every other week or once a month for a report or something. Or if you are more integrated into active team, then it's maybe a daily, maybe it's chat. So there's a lot of options. But being aware of what you need, and so if you get isolated and you're a team person, that will destroy you. Or if you're an independent or a self-driven person and you're forced to communicate constantly with this other location, it will also drive you crazy. So being aware of what you need from a culture type perspective too, I think is important on the communication side.
All right. Well, Rachel, then
Okay.
how can culture types help manage the challenges of multiple locations? Tell us more.
Well, look at how that just worked out. Well, a couple things for me. Depends on the size, right? Because as a team person, if I have a team of humans, I can pretty much work anywhere, anytime, make it work. Remote, local, close, far away, whatever. So for me, being aware of my culture type and what I need is also important too, in the sense of sometimes remote sites are only doing one thing, and that's why they're remote, right? So think of, I have a part of my background is I worked for the US Geological Survey, and they do things like volcanoes and earthquakes and rocks and that kind of stuff. And so some of our remote sites were strictly to measure the Cascade volcanoes in the Pacific Northwest. Well, if that's too structured for you, like say if it was me, I'm fixer, I mean, volcanoes are cool, so maybe it would be okay. But that might be too structured for what I want to do, the dynamic work environment that I enjoy. So that's also part of the culture type awareness of working remotely or working with multiple locations, is that it might be that the remote location is designed to do something very specific, which won't really suit the kind of culture type you are. Or maybe it will fit perfectly. It's that self-awareness and the role you're going to play at that location, I think, is super important. Other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to what Rachel said about even if you're on Zoom, and you can see somebody's face, you're not, if you're not interacting with them on a daily basis, it's easy to get sort of hung up on maybe some weird face that they make during a video call, or some comment that sounds snarky, on a conference call, but really that's not their intention. So I think culture types help when you're in a multiple location setting, because you really learn more about what perspective environmental preferences that person has, and what they're using to make sense of what is comfortable to them. So, outside of it, most of the time, most people will not just call a person who's being snarky in an email or a call or a video call and say,
It's true.
What the heck is going on? Are you okay? I mean, I've done it, but that's not necessarily what everybody does all the time. So if you're, not the kind of person that would call them and ask, if you know their culture type, then if they're an organizer and you're a chaos tolerant person and they're asking a shitload of questions on a call and you're thinking, for the love of heaven, like, give it up already. I'm sure somebody will send out an email to tell us exactly what we have to do. Well, that might be true, but that's not comfortable for that person. So knowing people's culture types when you don't get to be around them every day really helps you it's kind of a gift to yourself, because then it's not so crazy making when they act differently than what you prefer.
Yeah, a real downfall of remote work or multiple locations is that I remember when I worked away from my main office, one of my biggest frustrations is that a lot of decisions, communication, just camaraderie and all that stuff happens in the halls of the organization. And so the piece that Meg just mentioned about, it's alluded to really, is it's really easy to get sideways with people or not communicate or not feel connected because you are geographically remote. And that was the one thing that I fought the most when I was remote from my home office, is that I physically could not be as effective. And I hated admitting that, but it was true, because when it came down to, I didn't see an issue the same as a colleague and we had to kind of arm wrestle it down to the ground, me being on the phone is not as effective as me being in person and talking through an issue. And we go, okay, hey, wait, I heard this from so-and-so. I see you on the way to get coffee. Let's step into this conference room quick and sketch out what the solution is. By the time you hear about it, it's become a thing and it's a bigger deal, and then you have to fight about it. It's just way harder and also people are dealing with different stresses in each place. So as a team person, I was really tuned into the team I was physically next to, much closer than the team that was far away. So, but my core team was far away. So then what happened was my core team was dealing with all this stuff. Our project manager was assigned on to a different task. And so the whole team was like in this realm of uncertainty, and sort of the deputy was going to run the show, but he had just come out of the project. So he didn't really know a lot of the nuances. I'd been on the project longer, but I was far away, so I couldn't run anything. Oh man, I cannot tell you. I was the only time in my life that I've yelled at somebody on the phone, like at a work conversation, and I was like defending my team from this guy who came in and didn't really know. He was very, very chaotic, and he was one of those guys that we had this huge organization, but he would want to make a different decision like every day and swing this big boat all over. And I was like, no, you can't make that decision this way until we figure out what our what our goal is, and then how are we going to get there. So, oh my God, I can just tell you, it is much harder to be separate physically from your team. I don't care if you're an independent or a fixer or what. Probably more emotionally painful possibly for team people, but getting work done, I think it's hard for any culture type, frankly. So anyway, I kind of forgot about that story. Sorry, that was kind of...
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. What challenges? How can you prepare?
I like the how can you prepare question.
All right. How can you prepare to manage multiple teams before opening additional locations? Well, that's a really big question, and I think that Shelley should be fired from writing the questions for a while.
I love it. You know why? Because
Just kidding.
Yeah, right. No, we're not doing it. Please, we're not. There's never happened. I love it because it takes you out of the not necessarily solving problems, but makes you look forward, right? Like we are having meetings all the time, and one of our biggest challenges is what is there, and how do you want to prepare yourself to get there? So that's why I like this question.
Awesome. Then you talk about it.
No, I want to hear your opinion.
I haven't formulated one yet, so do it.
That is a lie. You have an opinion always, no matter what. That's why I love you.
Yeah, I know. I'm still thinking. Say your
okay.
words.
Should I jump in? Okay, yeah. Well, from a culture type perspective anyway, well, first of all, any big change like this is basically, you could think of it almost as like a merger acquisition environment where you are going from the way things are today to now you have this team and now you have this team. And so it's going to be different and everyone's going to be very worried about that. So from a transition and change perspective, you have got to have a plan to figure out where you're going, why you're doing it, what's the value, and how do you minimize the chaos so that people can actually keep being productive. Instead of having this huge productivity crash because no one's really sure what's happening and what's going on, you need to be able to identify and describe that vision for what you want, and then actually create some strategies about how you're going to get there the most effectively as possible. Oh, and here comes our kombucha guy. Hi, kombucha dealer.
Hi.
We're on the Facebook Live.
Oh, okay. I can come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
See you later. That was Carissa. She's our kombucha dealer.
I think the best way to prepare first before you do anything, like a lot of what we see in mergers and acquisitions or startup companies who are starting a second location or whatever, starting something else, is really define what is the scope of that project and treat it like a project. Do a feasibility study. Like, do we want to go open a donut shop in Aberdeen, South Dakota? Like, how many people are there? How many people actually eat donuts or even come into town from the farm on a daily basis? Like, I think before you even get into, all of the bits and pieces of, okay, we're doing it, the critical mistake people make is, should we do it? And is it going to actually work there? Which, that's a little bit of the telling the future. I don't mean that you can tell the future, but you can darn sure see what the odds of success look like. And then you can build a really good plan about, okay, how do we get to that success? And so I think I'm kind of moving backwards, but anyway, I think that that's a really important thing that needs to be done first. And a lot of times for people who start new ventures, you're interested in creating another site or creating another product or doing another thing because you're passionate about what you do and you want to help people in whatever way, you have gifts. But does it really make sense for your business? Because maybe you think you're going to help people. For instance, if Scoby Kombucha decided they wanted to start a kombucha store in Belle Fourche, I don't know if it would work that great because people in Belle Fourche probably don't drink a lot of kombucha. Now in Spearfish, where there's a bunch of granolas and mountain hippies, yeah, everybody here likes to drink kombucha, or they even pretend like they do if they don't. So I think, it makes good sense to make sure that your passion is aligned with the real business opportunities that exist in places that you wish they would. Mm-hmm. So that I think is a really important first part. And then, yeah, of course, the question we get a lot is, oh gosh, we don't have enough independents or enough organizers or fixers or independents or stabilizers on our team. Does that mean we're a bad team? No, it means now you know what you have to work with. But if you have an opportunity to build a brand new team and you know what kind of tasks that need to be done, you can attract a certain kind of culture type and a certain kind of person so that you have the right people in place to get the right work done. So if you, we'll just keep using Scoby Kombucha. If you're going to start a new bottling plant, you might need a fixer to sort of lead and drive what happens in that plant, but a fixer might get really bored putting lids on bottles all day long. So then you might want some stabilizers to do those kinds of jobs. And then maybe you have an organizer who runs your inventory and does your purchasing and manages your maintenance. So I think that's a real opportunity if you have the option to prepare to open a new site or move into a new areas to hire the people that make sense for the roles that you're going to have in place.
Mm-hmm. The other thing functionally, I think, can be challenging because if you think about things like IT, right? Let's say you have 4 locations and you have the IT as a function in your organization. Well, you really kind of want an IT person handy, because if you have a problem with a printer or anything, then what, do you each have your own IT person then? And maybe if you're all within the Minneapolis metro, that makes sense. They can just literally run to each place once a week or spend a week here, week here, week here. But what if you're in San Francisco and Chicago and Atlanta? Well, you can't have one IT team running around. So, but then that creates complications in how they communicate, what the budgets are. Do we each get a bigger budget because we have replicability? So it can be complicated. And that's the kind of thing, IT is the kind of thing that will just completely destroy your faith in humanity if you can't figure it out right. So sometimes some of those details of administration and what feels like minutia for especially for chaos people can get lost in these sort of plans. And is it the right thing? And will we end up spending twice as much on IT? And that's going to actually mean that we're not going to be profitable at that location or whatever it might be. So it is very complicated, but that's just one aspect of the complexity, especially if you're in a big organization that has multiple locations. I guess to answer the next one, we've kind of been feeding into it, which is what are the challenges we've seen. I mean, if we think about netball, and they have people all over the U.S., vice presidents and executives, and the world.
There are some folks in Australia.
Yeah, and the U.K. Mm-hmm. And their biggest challenge was they have an organizer president who she's like, her name is Sonia. She's like, here's the stuff, let's go do it. But most of her other people a lot of her other people were team driven. And so they wanted more time together. Let's get together, retreats, let's have more communication. But she's a deep organizer and she's like just getting shit done. I don't think she viscerally feels that need to connect all the time. And so it was a really interesting, I was going to say no one was, nefariously intended.
I knew where you were going with that.
Yeah,
that's
not really true. There was 1 or 2 people that were caught stirring the pot and causing more problems than necessary. But even if you take those 2 people out of the equation and look at the rest of the people who are just really passionate about the sport and wanted to support it and somehow build the program, there was still this weird disconnect because of the culture type. It wasn't a mismatch really, but it was a organizer to fixer sort of didn't really see the world the same way sort of challenge. And I think we went a long way to sort of healing some of that because we did a retreat with them down in Orlando. But we could tell, Sonia will tell you today, that we predicted everything that happened to that team in the next 6 months. And she thinks we're like magicians because we figured out all these things that were going to happen. And Meg really nailed a couple of the special situations. And so it was just, if you know this stuff going in, when you have people remote or different locations, it can really, really help avoid the pitfalls it's an awesome benefit to be able to live where you want and still work for a company far away. So that's the awesome part. But there are a lot of pitfalls, especially in communication and feeling connected that you're going to have. So.
Yeah, and I would say, we're technically out of time, but I would say some of the challenges we've seen with multiple location organizations, one is consistency, but not just that. A lot of times in a lower level in an organization, people say there's no consistency because I talk to the people at site A and they do it this way, and we're at site B and we do it this way. Site C does it that way. Yeah. But so there's that component of it, sort of at the tactical level within an organization, but then operational, like from an operational level, and then there's strategic. So at an operational level, it's like, well, yes, but functionally we have to do this thing. Like we have a schedule is a good example. We have to have this schedule this way at site B, which is different than what they need at site C and site A because of the operation, the production methods that are in place and all the stuff, weather maybe. And then at a strategic level, sort of corporate level, they're like, well, it doesn't really matter to us what anybody does, as long as, generally speaking, we don't get sued and keep making money. And I don't mean to say that they don't care, but that's their perspective, right? They're at the visionary level. And so they're like, you guys, we're giving you the autonomy to do whatever you need. And then operationally, it's like, great, but you've now just caused a major storm for all of us, because we need some consistency. So it's really hard. I don't know that there's any perfect answer to it. We haven't worked with an organization yet, and I haven't worked inside of an organization yet who has like the answer to this question. So just so you know, for those of you who are thinking about opening another location, or if you're managing multiple locations and you have consistency issues, whether it's we need more or we need less, or I need more autonomy or whatever, that's a real thing. It's really, really hard to manage that.
Yeah, and I think there's a big push right now for remote work, right? And we have teams in India, teams in China, teams all over the world. But it's a very complicated thing to do. And I think one of the most successful that I've heard, especially on a global scale, is where they just literally, to your point, say, you guys in India, you need to do it the way you guys need to do it. Cultural challenges, scheduling, timing, time zones, all that stuff, right? And then there's another group in Japan, another group in Germany, another group in Chicago. And so you have to kind of decide how you're going to go into it and figure out what the best solution is for you. It's sort of like when we deal with a team that's very small, even what you decide how you're going to work is the most important thing. It's not there's a right way or a wrong way. So I think it's important to really think about how the challenge of those things and how you're going to tackle them if you have an opportunity to do it before you do it.
Yeah, the one other thing that I would major challenge, I mean, there's a ton of them, but I think the other major challenge multi-site companies have is that because of the issue with consistency, most companies build a lot of policy and procedure around things that they can control at each site or want to, like safety, for instance, if that's part of your business, or maybe the way that you do accounting and finance, like that has to be consistent. So you put policies and procedures around that. But in some areas, you can policy and procedure things to death, and maybe still some of that needs to exist. But when we do that, and we don't talk enough about, hey, still be innovative, still ask questions, just because we say we shouldn't do this way, doesn't mean we wouldn't look at new ways. Because what will happen is people get sort of into groupthink mode, even though they're not at the same site. Like everybody just thinks, well, this is the way we do it, so we have to do it this way. And they just get in this kind of groupthink, and then nobody can sit around a table and say, hey, should we try this? Because everybody's like, no, because this is just how we do it. So you lose some innovation as you start to implement more consistency in policy and procedure. Not saying that that's a bad thing to have consistency, but be mindful about continuing to encourage people to say, to be innovative and say, because I was just working with a group, and they're like, they said that's their critical fail for the whole group is that we've just got so caught up in this is the way we do it that, even if you read a policy and procedure and it says nothing about it, it's still really hard to convince myself that I could think about doing something differently. And so it can get to a point where it's so ingrained in your behavior, it's actually how you process the world, and you don't want your folks to end up like that. So, yeah, and you will start attracting different kinds of people to your organization. So if people see you as stable, consistent, steady, non-risk, then you will attract more order-tolerant people. And so if you want to have whiteboarding and innovation and all that hand-waving stuff, then you have to be seen as that kind of company to attract those people usually. So it is an interesting balance about how much structure you put in versus the level of consistency you need. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah. Okay, we are officially
We're
like
out of
10
time.
minutes.
We're way out of where
yeah. Okay.
Blame Shelley for the complicated question.
Yeah, it's Shelley's fault. We're
My
really
fault.
good at the victim loop.
Oh, tell him we'll be in Memphis.
Oh,
I
yeah.
wonder if anyone was.
Mm-hmm. When are you going to be there? 14th, week of the November 14th, right?
15th and the 18th. I'll be in Memphis.
So Shelley will be traveling to Ole Miss, right?
Yeah.
For a game.
Oxford.
Oxford, Mississippi, to partake in college football. And so she will be going through Memphis, and we'll be there the 15th and the 18th of November. So if you're going to be there or know anyone that you would like Shelly to meet, please let us know, and we will make those connections. She's actively building out her calendar as we speak. So
Yeah, right on.
awesome. All right, everybody.
All right, lead powerfully.
Change the world. See you next time.